understand why you're here, how to live on purpose, and in divine harmony. I'm your spiritual coach, helping you level up along your spiritual journey, creating a life you love. Every week we have a discussion, and this week's discussion is, what is purpose? And what is my purpose? So for those of you who are joining live, which I've now started to go live on Instagram as well, please be sure to say hello. Let me know where you're listening from, joining from. Be sure to share any questions in the comments. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, thank you all so much for tuning in. One of the number one questions I get has to do around purpose, whether it's what is my purpose, what is purpose, why am I here, something of that nature. And that's why I thought, what a wonderful time to have this conversation, especially here in 2022. The energies really support us in stepping into our gifts and our passions this year and making a living. Well, why? You may be asking. It's because the energy of the two, so it's 2022 is the year, and each number, numerology, has an energy tied to it. So you have the divine feminine energy 3 times. Well, divine feminine is a lot of different things, and one of the things is your beingness. And I talked about that in one of the podcasts, where it's really this year's focus on your beingness. How are you showing up? What is your energy? Yes, there's always work. That's why I call it co-creation, not manifesting. For me, those are 2 different things. And manifesting is typically where I'm just sitting here wishing, wanting, hoping, and some people call it magical thinking and nothing happens, versus co-creation is taking the action steps as well. You have that vision, you take the action steps, you have goals that you're hitting. So this year, yes, is your year to really focus on your passions. And part of it is reprogramming. I know for me, over the past several years, I've done a lot of personal work of reprogramming my thoughts, my perspective, that, yeah, I was given gifts by God to use on purpose and for a purpose. And that I don't have to have this 8 to 5, 9 to 5 job. It used to be for me. I worked in what I call corporate land for about 20 years, and it didn't work out, and I left, and I had already had my business. So let's dive into what is purpose. So for me, the difference between your why and the difference between your purpose, they are different for me. Your why is what I call your fire. It's going to fuel you every single morning when you wake up. It's going to be the fire in your belly to keep pushing through when things get tough. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you have your own business, whatever you're working on, maybe it's a project that you're working on. It doesn't matter. Something's going to happen. Many things happen. And that why has got to be strong enough for you to continue to go. Last year during the Live on Purpose course, one of the participants said, hey, I just don't quite understand it. This is how I explained it to her. I can do anything. You could hire me for almost anything. You could hire me to do marketing, to do content marketing, to do social media marketing, to do videos. Like, I'm, an event planner by trade. I could be hired to do all sorts of things. And they don't really fuel my fire like what I'm doing now, what I'm getting ready to launch here in the fall of 2022. And the other thing is, everybody says I'm here to help other people. And I say, yes, and that's not a strong enough why. It's yes, and. What's a really strong why for you? There's something that you experienced in your childhood, or that maybe you didn't experience in your childhood, that you don't want anybody else to go through. And that's a piece of your why. And it's something that we really dig deep into in the Live on Purpose course. And that's a piece of knowing who you are, knowing where you came from. And I truly believe that you had those experiences for a reason. In fact, everybody is where they are exactly where they're supposed to be because you had experiences that led you to this point and that are going to continue to lead you to the next new point, the next new point, the next new point. So your why is your fire. It's your fuel. It's why you keep going. You know, part of my why is because I don't want anybody to experience the shame and the trauma of being left out and being made fun of. So that's what I experienced as a kid and from my peers. And so my safe haven was church. I grew up in the disciples of church. That was my safe haven. Those were where my friends were. I didn't have a lot of friends in high school. Part of that was because of my dad's position at the high school. And so I was not well liked at all. And I created masks and defense mechanisms like we all do at that age in order to simply survive. And so part of what I do and why I do what I do is because it's inclusive. There's inclusivity there. It's a part of my why. And I always remember back to how I felt, and I don't want other people to feel that way. I don't want other people to have that experience because it was a bad experience. So that's, for me, that's your why. It's not just helping people. There's a deeper meaning. There's deeper roots to it. Now, your purpose, in my experience, it gets larger and larger and bigger as you continue along your journey. So the more you grow and learn things and discover things about who you are, about really more, I think, about who you are and the experience that you have in life in general and the wisdom, it shifts and changes. And I'd like to share a piece of my story of how I got to where I am, because that's the other question I get a lot is, well, how does one become a divine synergist? What is that? So growing up, we used to have a big family gathering, anywhere between 75 and I'd say 100 plus people come every July. And between that and the other parties that my parents would throw that were inclusive, I learned how to be an event planner. That's why I say I am an event planner by trade. And I went to college for marketing, communications and marketing. And I continued to do events on the side because I loved the idea with events that I could bring people together, that I could bring different communities together. I used to do a lot of fundraisers as well, right? To give back, to help others in the community as well. One of my favorite fundraisers was Studs and Stilettos for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, because I brought in people from 3 to 4 different communities who typically would never be brought together. So you had the community of the cystic fibrosis families and their foundation and the people helping them. We had the Indianapolis Bag Ladies would come and dress in drag for us and perform. We'd get straight guys to perform, dress in drag. And then when I started to perform burlesque, I also had people from that community come as well. Plus everybody's friends and family came, and it was a ton of fun. And to me, that's what it's all about. You know, I'm recording this on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and he was all about unity. And that's one of the things I strive to do, is to take a stand for unification. So as I started to go along my journey, I had lost myself at one point in time, and I really felt like God was punishing me for some decisions that I had made in life. And I started to work with a life coach. And after my time working with her, I started to realize that I started to realize who I was as an individual, and started to get in touch with who is Karmen. Really, who is Karmen? Because I didn't know who Karmen was. And I had been divorced and, you know, just wasn't really sure who I was. And so I started to go along this self-discovery journey. And along that journey, I went to an event in 2013 out in Arizona called Celebrate Your Life. And I hadn't quite opened my business yet. And I went out there, and my entire life changed when I went out there. Keep in mind, I was still going to church. I was very much called to the spiritual, energetic, right? I was into astrology and chakras and the spirituality piece of it, the energy piece of it, very curious. And so when I went to this event, my entire life changed. My relationship with God shifted. Everybody kept talking about this oneness concept in church that I just flat out didn't understand, but nobody could really explain it to me. For me, it's because I needed to have that experience. And I started to understand that we're all connected through these invisible energy cords. And to me, that is part of the cord of the energy of God. God lives within each one of us. And we have the ability and the power to tap into that at any given time. And before that, I was not wanting to feel my feelings. I didn't know who I was. I was disconnected from myself. And frankly, I was numbing myself through alcohol and other things and masking it, right? Keep in mind, we do what we know. We do what we're taught. And so when I came back from that conference, it was a full weekend, I thought I could do that here. And I had opened up my business as an event planning company. And I wanted to do fundraisers, galas, really work with a lot of social non-for-profits to help them to give back. And I started to do that. And I started planning this event here that will happen this fall. And as things started to shift in 2016 for me, jump a few years, I get a little older and I continue to work with other people. In 2016, I was working with a relationship coach, and I started to see a different layer of myself. You see, we're like onions. There's layers to us. There's layers to everything. And I ended up getting fired from corporate land, which I had created because I didn't want to be there anymore. I was unhappy there. It was a toxic environment. And I had told God, I know you have the power to take me out, take me out. And I really feel like God said, I'm done with you here, and I'm going to take you over here. Now it's time for you to really focus on this event. And I really thought that my purpose was to launch this event. Really, really did. And the idea of the event is you would come and you would have experiences there at the event. You would hear speakers, and they would give you tools to use to help you discover your purpose. And then fast forward a few years, and next thing you know, my business shifts and changes. Why? Because I got curious and I started to understand who I was, and I had gifts that God gave me that you can't just be certified in. And, how do I communicate with my angels and my guides and my spirit team? And I'm still having conversations with God at the same time. Now I realize that I'm creating and I'm co-creating all these different ways on all these different levels through all these different paths. So that's how Heart's Joy, which is how you feel when you experience your awakening, was born. It's because I continued to step into and walk through the open doors that were given to me at that time. And I want to share this story with you. And I'll be honest, I don't quite remember the order of everything. For me, time right now is really vague. I had found a commentary Bible, which is a very ginormous Bible. It's not your typical Bible. It's a ginormous Bible in a storage unit that I was sharing with some family members at the time. And every Bible that I've ever seen in our family has always been written in. Someone has written to so-and-so date something in there, some sort of note in there. Nobody wrote in this Bible. And so I eventually asked my mom, where did it come from? I showed it to her and I said, whose is this? Where did it come from? And she said, I have no idea. I've never seen it before. I was like, okay, that's odd, right? And I also believe in my experience that everything happens for a reason. So I also remember watching a documentary around the same time, and it was called The Heretic. It's a documentary of Rob Bell, and he allowed people to follow him and kind of a day in a life and why he does what he does. We all have reasons why we're doing what we're doing. It's just a matter of, do you realize what that reason is? What's your why? And as I was watching that documentary, I thought, oh my gosh, it hit me, and I started crying. I'm supposed to help change the narrative of church. I'm supposed to help the people get closer to God just in a whole different way, because so many people have thrown out church and everything that goes with it because they don't like organized religion. And I haven't had the greatest of experiences. I've had great and not so great experiences in a church, in organized religion. And then, and remember, I don't remember the order of all this. I do remember it happening. At one point in time, shortly before that, there was an entity in my bedroom one night. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I do remember that because I wanted to sleep. And they started to move my arm up and down, get my attention. And I felt like that person was there to give me a message, meaning it wasn't like a dark entity. And so I went to a friend of mine and said, can you please tell me who this person is? When I had asked my angels to please escort this person out of my bedroom. And when they did, I closed my eyes to go to sleep, and I saw a picture of a man, just a man's face. Never seen this person before in my life. And she told me, she said, that's your great grandpa. And she said, he's here to help you. And I immediately knew what he was here to help me do. My great grandpa was a minister, was a Methodist minister. And I believe that he was here to help me during that time to launch this event that I've been dreaming about since 2014. Think about that. And I started to truly plan it in 2017. And why has it taken so long? That's another story for another day that I'll share. But it was so interesting how every shift of my life, I started to see a bigger vision for what I'm supposed to be doing. And I believe that's even one of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s quotes, is that you're not going to see the whole staircase. Take one step at a time in front of you. It's the same thing with your purpose. If you were to tell me that I'm doing what I'm doing now and getting ready to launch and do, if you would have told me that 5-10 years ago, I would have laughed in your face and said, yeah, that's not going to happen. Because my soul wasn't ready for it. When your soul's ready to hear it, your soul will hear it and take action on it. So keep that in mind. And it's not a seeking outside of you. That's what I did for so many years. That's frankly how I got myself into a lot of trouble. Had a lot of fun, got into a lot of trouble. And because I saw outside myself instead of inside myself. So here is what I've learned along the way that I'd like to share with you. The first thing is I started from curiosity. I mean, there's so much more to this story that I could share. And just know that when you start from curiosity, that's an energy literally opens your doorways. It's the judgment is a wall and blocks you, and curiosity just opens up the floodgates. So start to ask questions. By the way, right, wrong is a man-made construct. So even if you may feel like you're in somewhere that's how do I want to say this? Like you're on the wrong path, you're not. You're absolutely not. Everything that I learned in corporate land, I have been able to use today. And I understand why I needed to go through those experiences in order to do what I'm doing now and for a future. Number 2, my perspective shifted first. And when my perspective shifted, then the energy shifted after that. By the way, when we go along the spiritual journey, your body's always the last to shift. It just is. For me, my perspective shifted first. I learned how to meditate through a book. I meditated twice a day. I put a notification on my reminder on my phone to go off, and then I would go meditate. Did I really have any idea what I was doing? No. Did I learn? Yes. Because I was in curiosity and my perspective shifted first. Then my energy shifted. What else did I learn along the way? Ultimately, this is about the relationship with yourself that leads to the relationship with God, Creator, the divine source. I can't tell you how many conversations I had when I was at a particular church that I would talk to the pastor and say, I really feel like God's punishing me. And bless that pastor for being so patient with me, for helping me through that, because that wasn't the case at all. Those were lessons that I got to go through in order to be able to sit here and share with you everything that I've learned. And right now, given the current climate with where we are, I will tell you that in the end, we are being called and asked to have that relationship with yourself that leads to the relationship with God. Yes, it looks like the shot and the sickness. Yes, and the bigger picture ultimately is what's your relationship with yourself and what's your relationship with God. And if God doesn't resonate with you, use a different word. The other thing that I learned is that part of the relationship with myself is self-love. And self-love was my huge focus last year. I had gained a lot of weight during 2020, and it was coming to terms with it, coming to acceptance with it last year. What does this look like? How it impacted my health, because it did. And by the way, when it impacts our health, there's other thoughts that are happening that's also playing a factor into that. And so as those thoughts have changed, then again, your body's the last to shift. And now my body's shifting again. And this year, I'll start to share what I learned along my journey. Because as of with everything, it's a journey. There is no destination. It took me a long time to figure that out. There is no destination. Now you may say, okay, well, what about when I die? Well, we can have that conversation on a different podcast. I would love to have that conversation if that's something you all would like to have. Now, if you're seeking and asking, what is my purpose? I want you to know I'm here to help you. During the Live on Purpose course, I can get you to your why. And depending on what you share during week 6, after you do the brain dump exercise, I can get you to start uncovering the beginning of your purpose. Remember, your purpose, it's bigger as you travel along your journey. And it's, by the way, it's not just work. A lot of people get your what I call your vehicle or your job confused with why you're really here. I truly believe that we are here to be boots on the ground for God, because God's experiencing itself through me. God's having experiences for itself through me. Think about that. So we truly are boots on the ground for God. We just allow our ego and other operations, I call them operations, to kind of get in the way, because that's the human piece to us. We truly are spiritual beings who chose this human spacesuit to have experiences here on Earth. If you would like help along your spiritual journey, let's chat. Schedule your free 30-minute discovery session. You can go to my website, and I'm also going to drop the link in here as well. Thank you all so much for joining me. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you would like for me to continue to talk about this on another podcast, let me know that as well. Would love to hear from you. Next week, I have Melissa Laborski, who will be joining me. She's going to talk about the meaning and energy behind the Chinese New Year and how it impacts you. So I hope you will stay tuned for that. Be sure to, if you're watching from YouTube, subscribe. Wherever you are listening or watching, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. And thank you all so much for joining. Sending you much love.